Good morning. Welcome to Coffee with Caregivers. It's good to have you as a viewer again today. I hope your past week has been wonderful. I know it's probably been stressful, but it can be wonderful at the same time. I know I'm learning a lot about myself during this strange time in our history. And I think as I talk to my friends that they're learning a lot about themselves as well. So there's always good that comes out of hard times. And I hope that everybody's able to glean some of those new insights and ideas about who they are, how they got to who they are, where they want to be, who they want to be in the future, and make whatever decisions I need to make in order to make some changes if that's what it takes, or stay just exactly like you are now because you're very happy. So whatever way that goes, that's a good thing. We have our guest today who I'm thrilled to have on, and it's Chauncey Strong. Chauncey is going to tell you about himself because there's no way I can give you the background of this gentleman that would give credit and due to who he is as a human being and as a friend. And so I'm going to let him do the main talking and talking about who he is. But first, we always start out with a special cup. And so I had to really think because when we moved in February, so much of my stuff was packed up in boxes and put in a garage. And I thought, I don't really have any more coffee cups in here to use. I've used my coffee cups. I'm going to have to go out and dig in one of those boxes and find some more cups. And as I was looking through it, I found this one. And it's just says, "You got this." I almost didn't pick it out of the box because this was given to me by a friend when I was diagnosed with lung cancer in 2004. A person who never smoked, probably never even puffed a cigarette my whole life. Turns out it wasn't a smoker's type of cancer. I was so lucky and so blessed that it was a tumor in the middle lobe of my right lung. And the surgeons were able to do what they call a thoracotomy on me and go in there and just remove that whole middle lobe out of my right side. In doing so and checking all the margins later in the lab and everything, that tumor had stayed intact even through the diagnostic tests that they had run, but they told me every time they punctured it with a needle to take another biopsy, the cancer could leak out. But what they found is it didn't leak. And so a person with lung cancer, I didn't have to have any kind of radiation or chemotherapy. That's truly incredible. The diagnosis of lung cancer is horrible most often and difficult to fight. And I guess the Lord said, I'm not done with you yet, IRENE. We got more work to do. And so 5 years of quarterly CAT scans later, I was released and have been doing well. I have the same fear every cancer survivor has, though. When they go back to the doctor, they get a new symptom. They think, "Oh my God, please, Lord, don't let it be that. Don't let it be that." So when I saw this cup, I first thought, no way am I going to talk about this cup, because it brings back memories of incredible stress, fear of losing everything, the fear it put into my children and my grandchildren. Not a good time in my life. But then as I was looking through the rest of the cups in that box, I thought, you know what? My eyes just kept going back to this cup. And I'm like, there's a message there, IRENE. And I started thinking about, it's true. It's not a message of stress and fear anymore. It's a message of absolute hope and guarantee of strength that I didn't know I had, but God did. And an opportunity for me to make most of my time that I've been blessed to continue to have on this earth. So that's why I picked this cup today. And I don't want y'all ever to have some of those kinds of experiences, but I know many of you have. And to always recognize that the strength we develop through those trying times has probably served us extremely well over the years since that, and it's made us stronger and more capable people, and hopefully kinder and more loving people as well. So we're going to talk about an important month. June has a lot of national recognition months in it, right? Just as most months do. But June is a recognition for reunification, family reunification. And it's a topic that we don't really see a lot about as far as celebrating the month of June for that. It hasn't caught on like, foster care month and adoption month and social worker month and child abuse prevention month and all those months that are out there that we hear a lot about. We don't about reunification. So when we were planning our episodes for this month, we wanted to highlight some of those national recognitions that fall this month that have the realm of foster care in them. So when we talked about Reunification Month and who should we invite to be our guest to talk about that? Well, only one name absolutely came to my mind, truly, and it's Chauncey. I don't know Chauncey personally. I've worked on many national committees and work groups with him. We serve on the work group that plans the events for National Foster Care Month every year. So my acquaintance, I guess you'd say, with Chauncey has been over a period of years, although we've never actually met face to face, which I hope we get to sometime because I want a really big hug. But I know that he has information that will be valuable to you and that hopefully you can then share with others about the importance of what this month stands for. So Chauncey, I'm going to hand it over to you now to introduce yourself, talk to us about your cup, and then talk to us about reunification.
I'll take myself off mute here. So thank you so much, Irene. It's so great to be with you, and I'm so glad. Thank you so much for inviting me. As you said, over the years, we have been on many committees and been on conference calls many times with each other. And so just nice to now work with you in this way as well. So, and I'll look forward to being able to see each other face to face one of these days. Yeah, so I'm excited to be here. I want to share my cup today, and I went back and forth on what cup to share. So this one actually, if you can see it here, it actually says, let your faith be bigger than your fears. And I just thought, given everything happening in the world today and in the country today, you really need big faith because there's a lot of big fears out there. And I'm just going to leave it at that. So that's my cup for today. So again, I'm so glad to be here to talk with you about Reunification Month. I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. Again, I'm Chauncey Strong. I live in Alexandria, Virginia, although I'm originally from Newark, New Jersey, and moved to go to school. Went to Elizabeth City State University with my college, and then graduate school, I went to Norfolk State University in Norfolk, Virginia, and have been working in child welfare for the last 27 years, and specifically around foster care and adoption. I've done everything from working with private agencies in treatment foster care, in-home services. And back then we were not really using the word reunification, but that's exactly what we were doing. We were trying to reunify kids and either stop them from being removed in the first place or help them transition back home when they were in the foster care system. I've done a lot of work, again, with private agencies. I've done some consulting work with some of the national organizations. And for about 8 years, I worked with Fairfax County Department of Family Services as a foster care supervisor there in what we called our permanency and our life skills unit, which was just an awesome combination of saying, older youth in care need life skills, but they also need permanency. They also need some lifelong connections as well. So we worked hand in hand to try to make sure those two things came about. And then about 3 years ago, I took a leap of faith. I said to my wife, honey, I know I've been working for 20 some odd years, getting a steady paycheck, but I'd like to be a consultant, and I'm praying and hoping that it works out. And it has. Things have gone really, really well. And so I've opened up my own consulting, Strong Training and Consulting, where I'm the executive director. And I provide training and consultation across the country on a number of different areas, including things like reunification. And then really by far, so I don't know if you can tell or not, but I'm pretty excited about the work that I do. I've been doing it for a long time. I'm very passionate about it, but the passion really comes from my own personal experience. I was actually in foster care myself for a short period of time. It was me and my two brothers were triplets. It was Chauncey, Chadwick, and Clinton. And we came into foster care at a very young age and was adopted by the time we were, I think, between the ages of 5 or 6 years old. And I remember growing up, and in my family, we didn't really talk about adoption. We were just part of family, so we didn't really talk about it. But I knew, obviously, I knew we were adopted. And I just remember as I got older thinking, I didn't really know a lot about foster care and adoption, but I thought, okay, so this is how foster care and adoption works. Kids come into foster care. I'm not sure why they come into foster care. At that time, I didn't even know why I was even in foster care. But then they get adopted by these wonderful, loving families, and I want to go do that work. And so I got out of grad school, and my first job, I went right into working in foster care and adoption. And it didn't take me, maybe it was 3 months, and I'll stretch it to 3 months before I realized that that's not how foster care and adoption works, unfortunately, for many young people. They come into foster care and they stay in foster care. We used to call it they're languishing in the system. We used to say that a lot when I was first starting out. And then I realized that I felt like something wasn't right with this. Like, why are we removing kids and then they're staying in foster care? And then not only were they staying in foster care, their outcomes were not very good. So if they stayed in foster care, maybe they had good outcomes, you could say, well, but then the outcomes are not good. And so I thought, well, somebody has to do something about this to make a change. And I felt like I heard something say, well, what are you going to do about it? And so I just remember thinking, I'm going to dedicate my career as much as I can to help improving the lives of children and families in foster care. So that's what I've done for the last 20 some odd years, and hope to do this until I no longer work anymore. This is the work I want to do for a lifetime. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Really awesome.
And so what I want to do now is talk a little bit about Reunification Month, and I'll tell you a little bit, let me just start about the importance of reunification and sort of how I came to this work. I started out doing in-home services, and it was, again, not calling it reunification, we just called it in-home services, helping young people transition, either prevent them from being removed from the home, or when they were removed to try to help them come back. So I knew it was important work, but I also knew that it didn't happen a lot. While we had a lot of cases, some of the cases were not as successful as we would have hoped. So I just did the work for a long time, then moved into doing foster care, and then moving to adoption work. And I had the opportunity to do a training. It was called Unpacking the No for Adolescence Permanency, or Adolescence Permanence. And so Gary Mallon at the time, I'll never forget Gary, he worked for, at that time it was called the National Resource Center for Permanency and Family Connections. Great organization. And he had this curriculum called Unpacking the No, and he was looking for somebody to do that training in Virginia. And I looked at the curriculum, I said, that's a great curriculum, I would love to do it. I said, I'd like to do two things though. That curriculum focused on unpacking the no for adoption. And I said to him, I would like to unpack the no and explore it for all permanency options, including reunification. In fact, I wanted to start with reunification because that is the first goal for a majority of children that come into foster care. The first goal is to be reunified. I said, then I want to talk about placement with relatives or kinship care. Different states call it different things, but where the relative has custody of the child. And then I want to talk about adoption as well. He said, fine, that's no problem. And then the other thing I said, I also want to talk about unpacking the no, and it was about why do children say no to adoption? I said, but it's not just children that say no to adoption and permanency. You have the social worker that might say no and give you all the reasons why the child shouldn't be adopted or shouldn't be reunified. You sometimes have a foster parent that might say no. You might have the judge. You might have conflict. A lot of people say no. So why don't we look at unpacking as many of these no's as we can? So on that note, then I went and did a whole lot of research and started looking at reunification. And it was just so fascinating to read some of the research and the studies. And some of the studies talked about informal reunification. It talked about when young people would age out of the system. I think the study they showed at that point was like 89% of them went back home. Now, it wasn't legally reunification because they had aged out by then, but there was still this desire to want to know where you come from and to be connected to the people you come from. So I just started doing the training, and I remember vividly saying to them, you know, it's similar to what you said at the beginning. We have some of the best adoption celebrations. I speak at a lot of adoption celebrations. I enjoy every single moment of it. It's awesome to see these, the awards that's given out and the accolades and everything, and the kids that are being adopted. I think that's only rivaled by the foster parent appreciations that we do. I mean, those two are some of the best celebrations. And I thought, well, why are we not celebrating reunification? It is the first goal for kids in foster care. And so I thought, you know, I'm just going to keep down this bandwagon of saying we've got to celebrate reunifications as well. So back in 2013, I started doing the training. And then I stumbled upon the American Bar Association, and they had created a reunification month. And I said, there it is. This is what I need to talk about. And so I started doing some work with them. And if you don't mind, Irene, I'd love to just share with you a little bit about the history of Reunification Month, if that's okay.
Well,
Unless you had a specific question.
I'd really appreciate that because I don't know it either. So
okay. Okay. Awesome. So I believe you'll be able to see my PowerPoint. But if I look at just looking at reunification and Reunification Month, Reunification Month is celebrated in June, and it's a national recognition for people in the country that help families to stay together. And as we talk through it, you'll see, you know, what we talk about when we talk about recognition and why reunification is important. So it began in 2010, and it was a single day, and it was on June 19th. And it was around the Father's Day weekend. And then it included people like the American Bar Association, and it was the Center on Children and Law, and then places like Casey Family Programs, well-known, and Advocacy for Children. You see some, I won't read through all of the names there, including a judge there that was there from Iowa. And so they started coming together, letting people know the importance of reunification. And not only is it important, it's worthy to celebrate. And I thought that was just awesome that they thought this was a worthy thing for us to celebrate. And so then in 2012, the initiative really then took off as, okay, June we'll celebrate June as Reunification Month. I always love to give credit. So when I got involved in about 2015 is when I got involved, Mimi LeVar and Scott Trowbridge, and Scott's not there anymore, but they were with the American Bar Association and their student interns, and they worked almost just tirelessly to try to make sure that there was a website that honored reunification. And so I always give a shout out to them for the work that they did. And then I always love crediting Chauncey Bullock, because she was the one that created the original artwork, which you can see on the right side of the screen there, the original artwork. So a little bit more about the history. There were some key principles that remain central to Reunification Month. And I won't read the whole slide, but just to talk a little bit about them is that one, reunification is the preferred outcome for children in care. And we're talking about, obviously, safe reunification, returning to the parents or the place that they were removed when it's safe to do so, but that we should be working so that it can be safe and they can return home. That children can do well with reunification. Many of the children that go home, you know, some of them come back into the system, but many of them don't come back into the system. Reunification can work. The other one, and last one, I'll just jump to the bottom one, is that it really is going to take a commitment and collaboration for everybody involved. We cannot have reunification work if a team is not pulling together, if we're not willing to work with birth parents and foster parents willing to work together, and social workers willing to work with the courts and the courts with the schools, and everybody working together to make reunification work. So those are some of the core principles that they started out with as far as Reunification Month, and still hold true to what's happening now with reunification. One of the things that was a staple for the Reunification Month and the website, and you'll see this, hopefully you'll get the website here in just a few minutes, is that they have reunification heroes. And this was honoring the people, everybody from parents and lawyers and caseworkers, CASAs, who helped make the reunification possible. Because again, it is a team effort. And so on the website, you'll see going back all the way from the beginning of the website in the 2010, 11, 12, up until present day, they still honor reunification heroes. The other thing that's really a big staple for that website as well is showing what's happening across the country around Reunification Month. I was just on the site just the other day, and 29 states have either currently are recognizing reunification or in years past have recognized reunification with different type of events. So they have picnics, they may have rallies, there's forums that talk about the importance of reunification, and even proclamations around reunification. When I worked with Fairfax County Department of Family Services, the last couple of years before I left, we did some reunification events, everything from recognition for the birth parents and the family members who were reunified, to the foster families who work with them. We recognize them as well, and then even the workers. We did some gift cards, we gave them tickets to the county fair, whatever we could do to actually show our appreciation and to thank them for the hard work, because reunification is hard work, just like anything else that we do in child welfare. It's difficult. But then other states, we didn't do a formal ceremony. Other states also have formal ceremonies as well. Just a couple of more things here I'll mention about Reunification Month. So if you go to the website now, and again, the link will be on the end of this PowerPoint. Again, you'll see the heroes, and you're welcome. I have Mimi's email address here. They take heroes throughout the year, but June, obviously, we highlight the heroes that are happening. So if anybody's interested in sending in the hero, they get a lot of them, and so they're able to highlight them on the website. This year, there's a really great feature called Lifting Up Youth Voices, and it's out of New Jersey, the Reunified Foster Youth Program. 3 of their youth share their stories called We Are the Lucky Ones. And again, I love to hear good reunification stories, just like I love to hear good adoption stories or kinship stories. These are the stories we need to hear about all forms of permanency. Another couple of good resources, again, visiting during COVID-19. I think that's a huge piece that's happening now, obviously. How do you still have visits when you can't physically be with each other? And then we have also supporting families. And this really through the Children's Bureau. They have a great memo out talking about the importance of, again, helping to support families during this time, and even as we think about successful reunifications. And then the last one I'm a little biased on, I love talking about icebreakers. Icebreakers are, to me, one of the staples, if you will, when you think about reunification. It's the opportunity for a birth family and a foster family to work together. And so I've done a lot of training around that. NEKC, they did a video on icebreakers, and so we have that reference for you as well. That is an opportunity to have people come together. I'll have to go through 2 more slides here, Irene, and then I'll stop. But I wanted to just highlight a couple of states. There are a lot of states doing things. The 2 that I'm the most familiar with is in Virginia. There's a permanency newsletter called Permanency Matters, and it's a newsletter on reunification. And this year, they're going to have a little feature about dads and reunification. And again, we know how we need to continue to support dads and parental sides of the family, because again, when we don't have the dad or parental side of the family, we're missing half the child's family. And so the focus on that about dads can reunify with their children as well. And then Lutheran Family Services of Virginia has a great coaching program that helps support reunification as well. And that link is there. And then the last state I wanted to highlight quickly is just Georgia. Georgia is one of the few states that I know, and I would love for somebody to tell me something different. Like maybe I just don't know all the states and what they're doing, but where the state has actually hired a statewide reunification program manager. So her position is specifically, Samantha Walker's her name, and her position specifically focuses on reunification for kids in care. And then you see here, you can see the slide. They're doing some things, obviously, through social distancing now, but they're still going to honor and recognize reunification, including some tips on partnering and working with birth families, and then even some pieces around older youth reunification. Irene, that's the piece that probably was the biggest struggle, because I think you think after a certain age, reunification isn't possible. And what we have found, even if it's not through our legal reunification, young people are still going back to their families. They're still trying to find their families. So that's a little bit about Reunification Month. Here on the slide, I've also just left you some references and some places where you can find some more information. But go to the website. That's really where you're going to find all the information that you need to know about reunification. So yeah, so that's a little bit about Reunification Month, and I would love to ask any questions, or if you can say a little more, to let me know if you want me to say a little more about it.
Yeah, you know, as you're talking, I'm thinking about our experiences over the 27 years that we fostered. And of course, we started fostering in 1974. So, you know, we're old timers in this, and the times were so different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, back then, foster parents weren't allowed to adopt. They were afraid to lose their families.
Right.
Even though as a foster parent, you may have had the child or children 2, 3, 4 years, right? We're still working on the reunification plan. And you became very bonded with those children. And when the determination was made that all the efforts over those years just didn't come to the fruition that everybody was hoping for, and adoption became the permanency option, then those parents and those children who had bonded over all those years in foster care couldn't be a family.
That's right.
And it just was the most incredibly insane rule that I had ever heard of. You know, of course, the first child placed with us was the one that was there for 4 years. We had to go fight the state of Texas, literally all the way to the Austin, to the Capitol, to be allowed to adopt our son. And it didn't take too many years after that when they started seeing the potential for keeping, you know, stop traumatizing these kids over again by moving to another family when they have a family.
Yes.
And so, you know, but during that period of time, we worked really hard with his parents because we knew that the goal was for reunification, at least part of the state where I lived. When we went through our training, they said, you know, your responsibility really is, yes, you take good care of that child and you keep them safe and you love them and you meet their needs. But your real goal is to send them back home.
Yeah.
Safe family, right?
That's right.
One that can provide safety and permanence within that family unit and with that larger family group. And so we worked hard. We really did. And we fostered 127 children over 7 years.
Wow.
We had most returned home.
Yes.
We did everything we could. The parents came to our home. We taught them how to be parents. We did everything. And we had to fight the system oftentimes because we were told we shouldn't even know who they are, much less both of them. If we would take a child to a visit, we had to, you know, go in a different door to drop. We couldn't run into the parent, go to the front door. Just incredible kinds of ideas about good casework was all about. That got in the way of the foster families who get to intimately know certainly the children. Families too, because of everything they experienced through their children. And we got our hands slapped many times over the years until, you know, they just learned that's just the way we operated. And so that's, if we felt safe, we were going to do it. But, you know, we look at it now, but now you look at it and it's like everything totally changed. And so in the kind of late 80s-ish, when we made a lot of changes and it was, you know, everybody's on a dual track now. If their kids moved, it's reunification track and the other permanency track, whatever that's going to be. And we're going to work this case. And that's when, you know, the guidance came down from the federal government that we should look at every foster parent as an adoptive parent and started fundraising for adoptive families to come on,
Mhm.
because, you know, this is a way to build your family
Right.
through foster care. It doesn't cost you anything except,
Mhm.
right, very cheap, not like private adoptions or foreign adoptions. I mean, all of those things. And so we started seeing people whose real motivation truly was adoption.
Right.
And then
Right.
this work with the parents of these kids started getting more difficult again,
Yes.
because when you fall in love, it takes a strong person to say, I'm going to do everything I can to help that child go back to the
Go back.
didn't take care of
Exactly.
them. When I love them dearly and I want
Yeah.
them, right?
Yes.
Mine is, that's the one for me.
Yes.
How many times we tell people who are in the process of getting licensed that not every child that may join your family through foster care is going to be eligible for adoption.
That's right.
You know, intellectually you can understand that, but when your heart goes flip flop,
That's right.
you are so in love,
That's a great point.
and believe that there's any more love than that out there.
Yes.
It's really hard to take
Yeah.
the commitment of helping families reunify seriously.
Yes.
It really puts the foster parents, like I say, those who are adoption motivated, in a hard spot. And I'm not
Yeah.
going to say bad about adoption. We wound up adopting 4.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So
Right.
it's not like that.
No, not
But
at all.
it was 4 out of 127, right?
Mm.
Wasn't,
Mhm.
you know, and they were spread out over
Period of time. Right.
about 18 years,
Right.
literally. And so, you know, I truly believe in adoption, and I wouldn't trade any of my children or my 20 grandchildren or my 3 great grandchildren for anything in the world. And for a couple who came into the foster care system with no children and no hope of biologically having any,
Mhm. Mhm.
to have the family that I have around me now is, well, more than I could believe or even conjure up when I was
Right.
and praying and hoping for this family.
Yes.
So adoption is extremely important to us. And
Mhm.
but family reunification, when it is possible,
Yes.
when it can be safe,
Yes.
children can be more than just safe, but have some well-being in that family again.
Right.
Because there needs to be happiness and joy, not just
Right.
empathy, right? I mean, we know that in order to have a whole human being. So how do we, as the caregivers, embrace that and help these parents understand that it's more about than safety?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've had a mom tell me one time, she said, nobody ever talked to me about really happiness or joy. And she said, I'm glad somebody finally did, because I've never experienced it myself.
Wow.
And I don't really know how to do it. And, you know,
Wow.
Chauncey, we worked on how do you do that? What is it
Yes.
like? What kind of things can bring you happiness?
Yes. Yeah.
I hadn't even tried to find it because it'd been so miserable for so many years. And what can bring joy?
Right.
Things. And if you can have joy in your life, you can find happiness a lot.
That's right. That's right.
So there is so much that oh my gosh, I just have all these hopes and dreams
Yes.
for caregiver families in the foster care system, whether they be foster parents or kinship caregivers, those that are preparing these children for whatever the permanent solution is.
Right.
And hopefully it can be back with the original family. How do we help instill those things into those parents?
Yeah.
I mean, we want them to experience that. I want them to have well-being in their lives, some sense of comfort, you know,
Right.
stability, of being able to trust the world around them. What a tall order.
It is.
For most of these parents. And I mean, it's a tall order for some of us given any day of the week, right? But how do we get there? Those kinds of things for me are paramount. I mean, I'm going to retire in a year and a half, you know, and I just think, how do we accomplish this? How do we spread the word? How do we teach caregivers how important their role
Right.
is
Right.
in reunification? Oftentimes they are the ultimate advocate, not only for the child that's in their family, but for their
Their
parents.
parents as well. That's right.
And you have to have guts and speak out in court,
Hmm.
you think, and say to the judge, hey, you didn't call on me and I have something important to say.
Right.
So I know this child and that mama better than anybody else ending up here, because they've changed 4 times and it's the 5th caseworker and nobody really knows. And the attorney ad litem's never actually been to our house and met the child except here in the hallway
Right.
of our court. You know, let's be real about who
Yeah.
has an understanding of what's going on with these children and their parents and how they're getting along, and what services are working and what probably aren't. I know I had a situation one time where this mama was standing actually next to me in front of the judge, but all the people on her caseworker, the caseworker supervisor, the attorney ad litem were on down the line, right? That,
Hmm.
my side was me, and I guess it was just me, right? And so the judge, she was a timid mama. She truly loved her child.
Hmm.
She was trying her hardest at what she could get to. She had no transportation, and lived in San Antonio, Texas, so a big city, hard to get around if you didn't have money for a cab or a bus, right?
Hmm.
And she had a drug issue, and so she was supposed to be in drug rehab. And so the judge says to her, and this was a 6-month hearing, so have you finished your drug rehab? And she's got her head down like this, you know, no.
Hmm.
The judge says, well, obviously you don't love your child and you don't want your child back. Just like that. The caseworker stood right there beside her and did not open her mouth.
Wow.
Neither
Wow.
did the supervisor. That's when I was my first time to do a judge. And he said, okay, you're the foster mother, right? I said, yes, sir, I am. And he said, well, what do you have to say about that? And I said, I have plenty to say.
Mm.
Say to you that her name has been on a waiting list at a drug rehab facility that she could actually get to on a bus for months.
Mm.
And her name has not come up yet. She has not had the opportunity to even rehab. And I said, why her caseworker or supervisor has not spoken up and given you the facts about that, I don't know. But I cannot stand here in good conscience and ethically tell you that this woman wants to go,
Right.
but she has no opportunity yet.
Mm-hmm.
The judge looks at the caseworker and straight at her says, is this information true? And the worker said, yes, Your Honor. And then looks at the supervisor and said, and did you know this information as well? And you did not speak up either? She said, Your Honor. Asked the ad litem to the child, the attorney, and did you know about, well, no, nobody even told me, Judge. The judge says, okay, the two of you, the caseworker and the supervisor, I don't want you in my court anymore. You go back and tell your people, nobody that you work with gets assigned to my court, because I'm not going to work with you anymore. You come into my court again and do that, it's contempt of court citations.
Wow. My goodness.
And then he looked at the ad litem and he said, look, you should know all of this. You're looking at the best interest of that child and you don't know what the case is. And I'm sitting here fussing at this mama because she's not doing what she's supposed to do when
Right.
not assisting her in doing it. And so then he looked at me and he said, you know, foster mom, he still didn't remember my name. Thank you. You just made a huge difference in this case.
Wow. That's great.
And
That's
now I
awesome.
know I have to ask more questions.
Yes.
And I said, you know, Judge, if you can get the foster parents in here, which they have a right to be, that's federal, right? In most states, that law as well, of course. And I said, they need to be at the bench. They need to be up here when the case is called.
Mm-hmm.
Need to feel comfortable in coming up here when the case is called, not still sitting in the back because nobody invited them.
Right.
The case is called, you're part of the case, you go up there. And I said, you know, that's kind of what I've done my career, and I intend to keep doing it. And he said, you need to keep doing that because
Yeah,
it's for these
that's
families.
awesome. That's
and
awesome.
that mama got her child back, by the way.
Oh, that's great.
And it lasted. It was a good reunification. We have to inform caregivers about how important their role is.
Right.
And how they have to speak up. And if it's something bad to say about a parent because it's the truth, and then you have to say that too. That's
Mm-hmm.
you're
Mm-hmm.
going to hurt their feelings sometimes. But if they know you're trying your best to help them, right? Best. And they've learned to trust you because they know that you really are there trying to help them. Then when you have to say those negative things, because you have to, it goes down a lot easier.
Yes.
Because
that's
they still
exactly right.
trust that you are still looking out for their relationship with
There's
them.
a relationship, absolutely.
Right. And if you have to make a recommendation at some point that they don't go home, the judge says, you know, what is your opinion, Ms. Clements? And I'd say, well, in this one, I have to admit, I don't think it's going to work out, Judge.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that this mother and her children need to have a relationship regardless
Mm-hmm.
what their permanency plan is, besides going home.
Right.
Opens the door then for dialogue about what that can look like. So these kids don't lose that until they're
That's right.
And run from foster care.
That's exactly right.
Right? And try to develop those relationships that oftentimes they can able to do, and other times they can't. And
that's
then
right.
They're destroyed.
Right.
They're just crushed. Because I've had it happen to too many kids.
Yeah.
So now I got finished with my soapbox there, and I took over. But you know, I think that when you get to the stage of, you know, being an advocate for over 45 years in the system now, and time is growing shorter for the time to do that, I'm more passionate about all of these things than I did before. So the opportunities that we have through this show, the conference, and the variety of guests we have and the topics we have, a place to say some of the things I've been wanting to say for a long time. So thank you for being very tolerant of that, and our audience, because I'm looking at my watch and we have definitely gone over time.
Can I just thank you if you don't mind? Yeah.
No, I was going to say, any final words?
Yes.
Before we close out.
I was joking, gonna say, if I had a microphone, I would just drop it after you were finished, because you just dropped the mic on everybody with what you did there. It was awesome, and I appreciate, you know, your passion and your commitment and your advocacy for kids and families. The two things I would just offer is that, you know, the way to continue with this issue is to keep that message front and center, that young people can and should have the opportunity to go home. Foster parents or resource parents and birth families should continue to work together, get behind the fears of what's happening there. We talk a lot about what are the benefits of these children either going home or having a relationship with families. And so it's a hard fight, but it's a worthy fight. It's worthy for us to keep that good fight up. So I would just say thank you so much for all the work that you've done. And there's others out here. We haven't been out as long, but we'll keep running and fighting as well. So thank you for the opportunity. And I would just, the last little thing I'll say, and I promise this is it for me. One of the things that's one of my favorite quotes, I get sometimes people say, well, why is it important for reunification, or why is it important for these kids to stay connected to their families? And it's just something I heard. It's not even my original quote, but I heard it, and it said that it's hard to have peace when you don't have all your pieces. And reunification, family connection, help young people have their pieces. And so as we celebrate Reunification Month, let's try to help young people have all their pieces. So that's the last.
That's powerful, Chauncey.
Yeah.
That's the perfect way to close out this episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks everybody for joining us this week, and we hope to see you next week. Bye-bye.